Okay, welcome everybody to this session. I have two people joining me up above, and their cameras are on right now. I have Lisa Schultz, and you'll know her from the many presentations that she's been doing yesterday and today, and she still has quite a few more to do. Nancy McIntyre also has done a presentation today. She's got more presentations coming up. And I'm Mike Martis, the Regional Support Director of Regional Operations. Lisa is a regional director of regional operations, and Nancy works for the development department. And of all the people on staff, other than Brad Lauer, Nancy probably has the most seniority in the system. I think I'm number 3 or number 2. We're pretty much tied, Nancy. So I'm going to go ahead and start this one. This presentation here is on the STEM research, and it was called once upon a time the STEM Research Project. And over the last couple years, we've moved this to an online challenge. Okay. And I'm going to start out a little bit of information about the VexIQ STEM research project that is an online challenge. So this presentation, and there'll be some discussion, a lot of Q&A at the end, will be about this online challenge. And many IQ teams have been doing this for the past several years. This is not a new project, but we've merged it over to an online challenge. And one of the number one questions that's going to come up, I can head off Lisa ahead of time, so she'll get this one answered pretty fast. It's September. When is the online STEM research project challenge going to be available? And it's scheduled to be released the first week in September. And that's a traditional start time for that. So to go over a little more information, what is the purpose of the STEM Research Project Online Challenge? Well, when VexIQ, and this is a VexIQ ES and MS type of program, when it started, the staff looked at the IQ project in its elementary school and they said, wow, we've got a lot of young minds that are very energetic, that would like to do and need to do research, because it's more than just putting together a robot. All these different things that they learn in here, the math, the science that are involved in building a robot, need to have an outlet for the students that are very creative, because it will just cement all of their skills together and make that more holistic, solid path for education moving forward. So what we did was we came up with the STEM research project, because it does engage students in the development of research STEM topics. And from the very beginning, we focused a little bit on math. I can remember a couple of the math themes that were out there and science themes that we've had. So we've engaged them in the STEM topics. And for some students, this was phenomenal. We got great reviews from the parents saying, wow, I never had my child so involved in school activities till they started this project. And that's good. And there was outlet on there for team members that only focused on building the robot and programming the robot. All of a sudden, they watched these other students developing the STEM project, and they had a new appreciation to what STEM is. So it really did engage students. And I just hinted on this, it provides more team members with the opportunity to engage in the STEM activity. And this is important. We want to make sure that students nationwide, worldwide, have the opportunities to be able to explore all those things they want to explore, because our programs for VEX that are supported by the REC Foundation are really about education, the robotics education and foundation. So I put that point in there is because education is extremely important to us. And this VexIQ STEM research project, which is now an online challenge, addresses that. So why was, the other question that's going to come up, why was this changed from a competition at local events and world championship? The decision to move this to an online challenge was not an easy one by any means. This took several years of investigation. We took input from the event partners. The event partners last year and the year before, we discussed these opportunities and path moving forward. And it was overwhelmingly that it was time to move this to another level. And when you say, wait a minute, this isn't another level, you're taking it away from all the local events. No, we're not. We're making this another level because now every team can submit this, because one of the challenges was that not all event partners on a local level had the resources available to them to do the judging. An example was in 2019-20, there were 1,300 VEX IQ events last year. Okay, that's 1,300 VEX events. Worldwide, STEM project judging was only offered in 324 of those events. And of the 324 events, 101 were the championship events. So the limitations that were put upon event partners being able to have the resources, that means the judging, the space, the time to be able to do that, is phenomenal. And by going to an online challenge, we've really opened this up so that all those teams that wanted to do the STEM research project now can. So we've expanded the project on the project itself. It's going to be open to many, many more times the amounts of students that we had last year, and I think that's an important concept to understand. If we go by where it was offered, there were only 12 events in Canada, 5 in China, and the 266 were in the United States. And again, there's all these students, and I hear my RSMs that I network with, the regional support managers, all tell me, well, I only have 3 events this year that are offering STEM. And I say, why? Why are they only a few? And it was all about resources. So I hope everybody sees this as a good positive move, because we're going to involve more students. Whoops, I need to go back. There we go. And one more. Okay, there we go. So a few quick details about this online challenge, and then we'll open it up to questions, because I think the questions are going to be the important part. Quick details for the 2021 season. It's elementary and middle school. It can be either one. They must be a registered team to participate. That's important, because that way we know who's submitting, so that we get an opportunity to reward the good teams and the good submissions. And you'll hear a little more about that in a minute. It opens up in the fall. Fall, I always think of September as the fall time of the year. The topic will be announced at that time. There will be a deadline announced to when all the submissions are required to be in. The document is done real well. And I know Nancy has worked on this project over the years, and with her input and leadership, all of those things that I have on the side there, the first row, are all things that we, Nancy and the other regional support managers and managers know are real important, because we all want to focus that the students do the work, that there's one entry per team, and they have requirements, very good requirements on uploading the final product. There is a judging rubric, and we've got a great judging crew, and Steve and Cheryl are among the judging crew, and they've worked on the rubric, as well as Nancy's worked on the rubric. I've worked a little bit on the rubric. We all want to make sure that it's extremely clear to the students what the requirements are and how to be successful at it, because we want them to be successful. Now the important part, and this in some cases comes down to the why. Why should they do it? Why should they do this VEX IQ STEM research project? Well, the real reason is to learn more about STEM. And we've talked all about those reasons in this first 2 slides. But it does come down to the reward factor. And there will be a number of world championship spots still to be determined that will be associated with the STEM project. Okay. With that, Lisa, What kind of questions do we have in the chat line?
Hey, Mike. So for right now, there hasn't been any questions, but I was just, kind of going off on this. One of the things I thought is a great opportunity for this year is, there was a question in the COVID session about, I was a grant team last year, and my team can't really participate in extracurricular activities this year. But this online challenge might be an option if you really can't get together and work on a robot, but maybe you can do a collaborative virtual STEM research project together. This would be another really great way to participate in the program still. So again, just providing a different pathway to participate and still stay engaged with students. I think this is a really phenomenal opportunity for teams to do that.
Yeah, I know if I was a coach and my school district and the conditions of the school district were such that we had partial school or some hybrid school activity, and I wanted to keep these kids engaged in STEM activities because, and I know Nancy being an educator and Lisa, you were an educator, we know that school is much about what they learn and how they learn, but it's tied to a three-letter word, and that's why. Students, when they're shown the why should I learn this, then the whole meaning of everything they learn is much stronger. And the VexIQ STEM research project addresses the why, because in the process of them doing the project, all of a sudden they're seeing the links between the math, the science, and I can assure you that those students that do these VexIQ STEM projects on a variety of different subject matters, when they have their science classes or their math classes in school, they're many times more energetic, many times more energetic. I'm going to put Nancy on the spot a little bit. Can you give us your impression a little bit over the past about what you've seen the VexIQ STEM research project, how it changed students?
I can, because I can do a couple of stories from when we first got started with the very first pilot season. That was 2013. And those teams each only had one robot, but they wanted multiple students on their teams to be able to participate. And this gave them the opportunity to be able to give more students opportunities to be able to contribute to the program. So all the students were working on some of the design work, and when they weren't doing the design work, they were working on their research projects, which over the years have changed and flipped back and forth between science, technology, engineering, and math. It gave them an opportunity to be able to contribute. So if the research they were doing was on science one year, they were taking what they learned about science and sharing that with the students who were working on building the robots. And so everybody gained from the experience. And then when they came back to present on their topic to the judges, everybody came together and was able to present. And the students who were working on the robot were able to contribute things that made sense to the robot. And the students who were working on the research portion of the project were able to contribute on that level. And there was a real synergy that came out between the two groups. So that's been a huge success of this particular portion of the program. One of my favorites. It happened to be a team that came out of California, and that they met up with a gentleman who was in the military at the World Championship, who had a robotic device that allowed him to be able to stand up and walk after having been severely injured. And he was walking around the Kentucky Center with this team who had contacted him from California. And he was so taken by what the students had learned, and they practiced their presentation probably over Zoom or Skype or something years ago. He managed to get himself out to the World Championship to see them, and they were the team that won at the World Championship years ago. you know, the opportunity that students will find out something that'll take them in a whole entire new direction or inspire them to go do something else is really what this was all about when we created the project. So it's a very, very powerful component. It's just as powerful for some students as building and coding the robots. So does that help?
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely. Lisa, you
Mike, we
got some
have some
questions for me?
questions.
Yeah, I see those
So
coming in.
they're good ones. The first one is, will there be a separate awards for middle school and separate for elementary school for this online challenge?
Yes, they'll
Yeah,
function as two separate divisions.
yeah,
Yes.
and that's important because there is age differences that are important in the learning process. And we know that even on the competition aspect, the older students have a tendency to do some things slightly different than the younger students because they've got more experience. And the same thing will go into the project. So we've divided them up into separate categories.
So the next question, which I love, and I'll share a little bit. I was thinking of this while we were talking, so I'm really glad someone brought it up. Could a middle school VRC team participate in this? Is this for VRC or just IQ?
Nancy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is an IQ centered project. And if they're a VRC team, they fall into the VRC category. And at this moment in time, and I always use that, there is no VEX VRC STEM research project.
I like how you use that at a moment in time, because due to the current situation, this might be a really easy thing to flip a switch on to open it up for a separate VRC online challenge. We'll definitely have to discuss more. There's a lot of moving pieces in that, so I don't want to commit to anything on this, but I think it's a very interesting idea to consider. Sorry, Nancy, I think I almost cut you off there. Sorry.
No, that's okay. And that's exactly what I was going to say. At the moment, it's not set up that way because I've got my notes here in front of me. I know it's not turned on for VRC middle school. It doesn't mean it couldn't, and it doesn't mean that there couldn't be a parallel type project introduced. But I think we're going to need to come back together and meet with Steve's group to find out all the components of what they're planning on launching. So I think that's just in coordination on our side, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Agree.
That's a great one.
Mm-hmm. The next one is, will submissions be judged the same way as other online challenges are, i.e. in multiple stages with using a combination of RECF staff and volunteer judges?
That's the
Nancy, I'll let
plan.
Nancy answer that one.
Yeah, that's the current plan. So the judging has been set up so that it will follow the judging patterns that are seen in the online challenges.
Perfect. This one just maybe a clarification on what you said earlier, Mike. It says, will this no longer be offered at events? I'm assuming like qualifying events and state championships is what they mean here.
Yes, there's no intention for it to be in our award structure at events. You know, what the event partner does on site, you know, they can offer awards to, you know, the best looking costumes when it comes to Halloween. They can offer awards to, you know, a judge's award for doing other things. If the event partner wants to have some displays put up of the projects, they can do that. They are just not qualifying. They're just not part of the qualifying structure, and the RECF would have no impact on what they do. Does that pretty much follow, Nancy, with what
Yeah.
we've done in the past?
And just to add on to that, because we had a follow-up question, I think, so just to clarify, is these online challenges only qualify for the World Championship? They don't qualify for their local, state, or provincial. So if you submit a STEM research challenge or a project through this online challenge, it's only for VEX World. That's not qualifying to your state or regional championship.
Yep.
That's correct.
says, can teams get feedback on their online challenges submissions?
That's been a lot associated with all the judging overall, because when they do their excellence awards and things of that nature, we currently do not give back anybody their rubrics that were used in the judging process. And while I know there's good educational value in that, it becomes a logistic challenge to be able to do that for the organization. In this case, in the past, it was the event partners doing it. And it also sets up some complications in the whole process. And I know since this is an online challenge, we probably would not be able to facilitate any type of a feedback for that.
So one thing that is on here, it says, can you share more details about the requirements and guidelines and the voting process? I think something along the lines I was thinking of too is usually we'd have a STEM research rubric, and how is that going to be handled this year with the online challenge?
Okay, the online challenge, of course, will be judged online. And as with any award that you give, and as with any test that you give, and an online challenge is very similar to the teacher in the classroom giving a test to see how much the students actually know. And any test that any modern teacher creates is all based upon a rubric, you know, and so that there is structure so that all the entries are judged in the same light, in the same vein, looking for the same elements. That's why we use a rubric. And so there will be a very clear defined rubric for the different stages of the judging that will be developed by our judging crew.
And I would sort of suggest too, all the online challenges have very detailed requirement sections and sort of details of what should be in each of those. That's common to all the online challenges. When teams have been asking for feedback in the past, what I would typically do is have an outside person come in, look at those requirements, and then they would do their presentation or show their video, and have them sort of critique it right with them. And that way they can give feedback directly to the students. And that's a really great way for them to learn sort of where some areas that they can improve upon.
Right.
I know we're in our last 5 minutes here, so I'm going to pick out a couple. Can EPs decide to offer STEM projects, or is it strictly on a higher level? I think they mean like online challenge for worlds.
I think I would, if they're going to do something at a local level with the STEM project, because it's not going to qualify them for Worlds, it would always be in their best interest to discuss with their regional support manager, because what we wouldn't want to happen is for them to inadvertently give the impression that the online challenge or the STEM research project at their event will qualify them for something. You know, if they want to do it as like a scrimmage, so to speak, you know, where the kids get to practice their presentations and they have the bandwidth to do that, I think that's okay. But I would suggest that if they're going to do something like that, that they network with their regional support manager so that it can be extremely clear that of what level this activity would be at their event. Do you have any other cautions, Nancy, on this?
No, yeah, just making sure that everybody knows that the online challenge process will be how the teams move to the World Championship this year, which is very different from how it's been previous. So last year, they could, if this events hosted it, they could pre-submit, which is a different process in the online challenge, just in making sure that everybody is as clear as possible. Maybe calling it something completely different, a showcase, where they're maybe not giving awards for it, you know, just recognizing and having the students show off their backboards or show off their presentations or something like that in a showcase setting, that it's clear that it's not moving anybody forward. As long as that's clear, I think it's good.
Yeah, and I think that is the extreme part. And that's why I would recommend everybody that is considering something like this network with the regional support manager so that they can get this as clear as possible. Because, well, I want to go back on one thing because I know we got about a minute left. I'm going to jump on something here that I was part of the judging process in the past for this and many, many other online challenges. to anybody thinking of submitting this VexIQ research online challenge, the #1 failure in all online challenges is failing to post it to the proper location. They don't make it accessible. They say they posted it, and when we go to look at the online challenge, it's not there because they did it incorrectly. So our directions are very, very good. If they don't understand the directions, they need to get with the regional support manager. And the second thing they need to be very careful on is don't wait till 11:59 and 30 seconds of the time when it's due to submit your project, because whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And the internet, I say, is a wild, wild west. We can sometimes control what happens, and it is time stamped when you submit it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So one
Lisa?
last thing, because I know we're kind of out of time. There were a few logistical questions about online challenges. I wanted to share with the group that Tanya Weber, who's in charge of online challenges, is giving an entire session on it tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. in the main GoToWebinar room. So if you didn't get your questions answered about the logistics of this online challenge, please tune in to that session, and Tanya would be happy to address those, or feel free to reach out to your local RSM and they can help you with this as well.
Okay, I would like to do a personal thank you to Nancy. Great, thanks having you here and answering questions. Lisa for handling all the questions and adding in, and to all the event partners that are on this call, thank you very much for attending the session. If you have any comments, questions, just let us know. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
Thanks,
everybody.
Mike.